Hello and welcome to round two of the BUSR GT3 Championship. With me today is Max, and we are at Zolder. And it's a dark one here today, Max. Uh, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Juuso. How are you on this beautiful Valentine's Day?
I mean, I wouldn't have any other plans than being here with you today. But before we head onto the track, rather, let's take a look at our Simhound track guide, narrated by the wonderful Cav.
Our second Simhound track guide of the Spring Championship takes us to the Flemish part of Belgium for Circuit Zolder. 4 kilometres is going to be a bit of a blast on board of Harry Spears' Bentley. Make sure to line up for the Coke Zero, breaking down to third. You can use a bit of the grass on the inside. Make sure to use the AstroTurf on the outside for the maximum amount of exit. And then it's going to be third for Sternwacht. Again, you want to use curbing on the inside and on the outside to maximise your exit to get a flat-out run towards Lucien Bianchi. Again, a third gear corner. You've got some curbing that you can use, but very little runoff. You've got gravel there that will bite. Now down to the kleiner chicane. If you've got the engine in front of you like the Bentley, you're going to be having a hell of a time here, breaking down into second. You can use all the curbs. If you're of the middle rear engine persuasion, you're going to have a real tough time. Then we run down to the Villeneuve chicane, named after the Canadian F1 driver, break down to second. You've got so much curb, you can use the inside. Those cones are your markers. You can use some of the runoff here, going through Termen. And then it's running down to Boulderberg. Break just before the Pirelli. Slowest call on the track. You go all the way down to first here. Use the curbing and the Astro. And then through Jochen Rent. Got a nice little rest before Jackie X. Braking under the gantry. Again down to first. But then it's about making the most of the exit. And again, stick to the left if you're on a hot lap. If you're going racing, stick to the right. And that's a lap around Circuit Zolder.
All right, so Zolder, Max.
hmm
What are we expecting here? I mean, it's a track we haven't raced that much in the BUSR. It's night, it's cold. Yeah, what are we thinking?
I think there's certainly a lot of high curbs at Zolder, which will be, I think, the main factor. Particularly on lap one, I reckon we'll see a couple people trying to jump across those first chicane curbs, and not necessarily pulling it off how they want to. But with it being cold and nighttime as well, you're going to have some problems with maybe brake warm up on the formation lap. So I think turn one and then lap one as well will be something to watch indeed.
I mean, lap one always a special one
Absolutely.
in the BUSR. I think today we're looking at basically the same favorites as the first race at Brands. I think Harry Spears is probably going to be up there. Jack Noller did eventually end up taking the win at Brands as a cabinet decision, steward's decision at the end.
hmm
As a result of an appeal, a 10-second penalty was applied to Harry Spears, giving the win over to Jack Noller. But today, I think Harry a bit more of a clear favorite today. What are we expecting in terms of the rest of the field?
I think we know. I've seen that Nathan Carey is back in this week, and he loves Zolder. He was banging on about how it's his Valentine date for the year. So I think we'll see him do well, but I think Harry's probably going to run away with it a little bit with both the Bentley and his speed around here. But we'll see.
Last week, we saw the McLarens in the upper midfield. Jimmy Lynn taking third position, and Alain Foster taking fourth. Are we expecting to see the McLarens up top again? I mean, they are a strong car. I think we did have a chat with some of them as well, and I think they're expecting to be relatively strong here. But you mentioned the curbs earlier; they can be deadly. Will we see the McLarens up top again, or do you think some of the front engine cars might be a little bit stronger?
I think in the mid pack, the front engine cars will be stronger, but those guys up at the top, so like Jimmy Lynn, as you were saying, in the McLarens, they know how to hit the curbs with the car, so they'll be fine. They might have to be a little bit more cautious, but I think they'll be okay up at the top.
All right, we're just about to head to quali. Just a couple more drivers finishing their practice laps. Yeah, I think in general with a cold qualifying as opposed to a normal daytime qualifying, is this a are we going to see the drivers prepare differently? Are we going to see a very standard qualifying, or are we going to see a little bit of a different pace? Are we going to see different rhythms? Obviously, we tend to see a very strict rhythm, at least from the top drivers. But with the rather extreme conditions, is there going to be something different, or are we just going to see a bulk standard qualifying?
I think we're more likely to see longer runs throughout the whole 15-minute session, as opposed to usually we see sort of 2 runs maybe. But if they get their tyre pressures right on that first run, then people will want to be going around, keeping the heat in the tyres, and just, I guess, pounding around. And I think we're going to go over to see them now.
Yes, we are. So qualifying has started, and some of the first laps are also underway as well. Harry Spears, in his usual fashion, has left the pits early and is the first car on the road right now. Yeah, it's a short track. We might see a little bit of congestion there here and there as well, a little bit of traffic. But let's see what Harry can do on his first lap around, rounding out the final chicane just now. Makes a wide exit over the curbs there. It doesn't go as wide as we've seen in some cases, but over the line, and that's a benchmark lap of 27.2. Rather strong one, but then not really the peak of what we can expect today, I think.
Absolutely. I think we saw in practice that Harry managed to do a 126 as low as that, but actually it's interesting to see that he's just returned to the pits after that first run. Maybe he hasn't got his tyre pressures right for these lower temperatures. So we'll see him go out again, I imagine, to put in a faster lap and then probably pound around for the session just to see where he can get to.
Yeah, see Jacques Noah, probably the other favorite for today's race, going to start his lap. We saw him back up a little bit, create a bit of space ahead of him. I think that's what we're going to be seeing a lot today as well in this short track. But some interesting first times here set. I mean, I don't think we're really expecting the likes of Fletcher to necessarily stay in that 7th position, but relatively close times in the midfield nonetheless.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that obviously we were talking about the front engine cars just a minute ago, that they may be a bit stronger here, but you can see a lot of all mid-engine cars from 2nd down to 7th at the minute. But obviously a lot of the front engine cars haven't gone out just yet. But yeah, it's promising pace from those guys in the midfield, but there's a lot of gaps in there to be filled.
Yeah, and obviously this was just the first lap, so we'll probably be seeing a lot of improvement, a lot of improvement to come. We saw some retirements at Brabhams. For example, I believe Unstead retiring, ending up in the forest as well. What are we expecting? Are we expecting them to bounce back immediately, or is that something that might throw you off a little bit, especially when you have to qualify for the next race as well and try and get that back into that peak form? Is a retirement like that, disconnection, no fault of your own, is that something that could set you off, or is it something that you can just easily bounce back from?
I think Unstead's retirement, it was internet based, so it wasn't necessarily their driving that was the issue, so they'll be, I think, confident back in the car. But the only thing that they might miss out on is that late race experience that they would have got, given that it was their first time out. But I think they'll be able to get back into it and hopefully replicate a strong performance like they had last week.
That's what we're hoping for. So Jacques Noah now also went back into the pits after his first lap, but a second behind, a 28.2 as well. So quite a big difference here from the two front runners, and actually Anna Langstaff-Foster only 0.3 behind. So potentially not the best possible lap for Jack, but we'll have to see what he's able to do. Jimmy Lin currently in 4th place, about half a second behind Anna Langstaff-Foster. I think we're going to be seeing this battle for 3rd position. I mean, it's going to heat up towards the end of the quali, I think.
Yeah, certainly, and hopefully we'll see it throughout the entire race. We've got 3 cars, so they're perfectly matched. It'll just be down to setup and driver, and I think that'll be an interesting thing to follow throughout the event.
Definitely, and we're seeing the McLarens up top again. I mean, we were sort of expecting this, of course. McLarens are very strong in general around the calendar and in the current BOP as well. But Jason List currently in 6th position as well. So there's definitely cars that can challenge the McLaren right now as well.
Yeah, which cars do you think would be your choice to challenge that McLaren?
I think the Ferrari is actually a pretty good choice here around Zolder. In the new BOP, not as strong as it used to be, but could definitely be something that can challenge. Obviously, Jason List being the only one in that Ferrari today, so it is very much up to his driving as well. But then again, he is a previous podium sitter. We know he has the pace. Whether he's able to extract it here today, I think is going to be the key here. The Audis are a bit of a mystery. We haven't really seen them around that much, so it's really going to be interesting. But I mean, as we're talking about, the Unstead takes 5th place, beats Ferrucci by just almost a 10th. So definitely can bring that challenge. Actually, identical time to Jimmy Lin as well. And well, there goes Cher. So either the track is getting a bit better, or just people are maybe able to extract a little bit more time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see the drivers now. They're getting used to the track, that their times are sort of getting jumbled around a little bit, and I think it won't be until we see those final runs that we'll properly get a good idea of the final grid. Ooh.
Yeah, and Harry Spears, 26.9 now, so improves by a 10th, and really does look to be claiming pole without much challenge from anyone else here today. I mean, we did have a brief chat with Jack and Harry prior to the race, and I believe Jack was already congratulating Harry for the win this race. So he doesn't really believe that he's able to challenge, I guess. But we'll obviously have to see once the race gets started. A couple more laps time as well. Obviously, it's a short track, so the drivers are able to do quite a few laps. So that will help a little bit, especially in the battle in the midfield.
Yeah, I think Jack is congratulating Harry already, but last week he was probably going into the last 15 minutes, didn't think that he'd be challenging him at all, but obviously he did in the end. So it'll be interesting to see whether Harry makes any strategy decisions that count against him today, similar to last week.
Yeah, I mean, strategy, I think with Jack, that's something that we've kind of always discussed, like strategy calls and the decisions he's made on that have played a major factor in a lot of races in BUSR. So we'll see if that happens today as well. So just running down the order a little bit, Anna Langstaff-Foster was struggling a little bit in the practice, but seems to have been able to find her pace now in 3rd position with a decent gap to Jimmy Lin in 4th. Sharon Unstead now, though, both of the Audis, they're 5th and 6th currently, with just about almost a 10th separating the two. They're able to pull the Audis to a pretty good position right now.
Yeah, it's surprising to see them up there. The Audi's getting to be quite an old car now. We've got the GT3 Evo 2 that's come out in obviously the real World Series, but to see these to see these Audis back up there again is nice to see. It's an old favourite of the BUSR, as we all know.
Yeah, and of course, an old favorite of yours as well, running a season with them. Maybe with, mixed success.
Mixed results, yeah.
Yeah, but definitely something you're extremely familiar with. Josh Parrott in the 24 Mercedes there. I think Mercedes, a car that we potentially expected to see a bit more of in this season. Not really running too well. Obviously, Josh had I believe, had an incident, and Brands wasn't able to finish the race if I recall correctly. Um, but seems to be running quite decently. Not really able to match the pace of the mid-engine cars, though, as it seems so far. So we'll see what he's able to do in the last couple laps as well. Ishan Wells currently in 13th position in the Bentley as well. Not really able to match Harry Spears, but then again, who is? And he's obviously, I believe, he's fully clear of the 107 rule at least, but will be looking to improve his position and maybe even overtake the Lexus of Perkins.
Yeah, I think something I noticed on Josh's lap we were on there with a minute ago, and then also Ishan, is that they're not necessarily maximising the potential and the strong points of their two cars, and that they can take a lot of curb. They can, that's where they can gain the time around this track, where the mid-engine cars might not necessarily be able to fight with them. But once they start using those curbs a bit more and hitting them in the right ways, then they'll certainly gain a lot of time. We'll see if they can do that going into these closing stages.
Yeah, and just going back into the top of the field, Harry Spears has improved. A 26.755 is currently the pole time. Jack Miller has made it within a second, so is getting close. But after that, the gaps do start to grow a little bit. And Langsdale Foster keeping the third place relatively clearly for now, with about 4/10 being the gap. There's Nathan Carey. Takes a little bit too much of those curves you were just talking about.
Yeah, and that's the danger you run. You can see that is where, like I said, that is where the time is, but just a little bit too far over the edge and they will bite you.
And obviously we always talk about setup, and you were talking about the setup differences between the McLarens earlier. But with the front engine cars as well, it's not always so simple. I mean, front engine cars, even though they do handle the curves better, they do still need to be set up for it, and you can make a mistake in your setup and maybe set up the car too stiff or whatever, and suddenly those curves become deadly. And especially when it comes to quali, as Adam Lee takes a little bit of drift there on the chicane, especially when it comes to quali and then the race after, there's a certain level of safety you want at a track like this, where you will be jumping those curbs that you might not set the car up for in qualifying. So that is another difference that could be a factor.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we head into the final minute of qualifying now, we've got probably the people we want to keep an eye on. We've got Lynn here. Nola's just pitted, so that's one off my list. Langsdale Foster and Unstead are up there very close to one another. We can see whether Harry Spears goes any quicker, but I think for a minute we'll watch Jimmy Lynn as he deals with this. Is this traffic or is this someone else on another lap? I think it's on another lap, so that's not going to play into his hands, which will be...
Yeah, that's Faruqi, I believe, on a lap. So, or... No, yeah, it's Faruqi on a lap. I believe Anna Langsdale Foster has also pitted, or is... Yeah, it definitely has.
Anna's still out on the track.
Unless that is a glitch, I see yellow flag, but... Either way, we're going to see what Jimmy Lynn's time is going to be. Ooh, gets really close to the car ahead there.
A little bit hesitant on the throttle just because that car in front, but they're going to take the shortest run to the line, and they've crossed the line with a... What time was that?
That was I can get you... That
1:28.9, was it?
Yeah, so, yeah, 1:28.9, and... it's not going to be an improvement either way, but it does mean Anna Langsdale Foster will be able to keep third place. So that was Lodge ahead of him, also being able to set a time for the quali. Perhaps not a time he's completely happy with, but a time nonetheless puts him in 12th position. And with a couple more cars on track, doesn't look like there's any major surprises here coming up. I think Perkins actually did overtake Parrott What was that the other way around? Either way, 200's the difference between 10th and 11th place. They'll be starting on the same row, so that's not too big of an issue. But yeah, that's very close times, and we'll see if Harry Spears is able to improve his time. Obviously, he has the pole position already, but coming across the line now,
3/10
does
faster.
improve. Yeah, 26.497, and no, that's a world class time.
Yeah, like we said in the practice, he was capable of a 26.4. So to see that come out in qualifying is something pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, we always love to see these absolute peak times, and it's obviously it's a good bar to set for all the other drivers in the BUSR. Obviously, we do see all level of drivers in the BUSR. We see drivers that have just started. We see drivers that have years of experience, and we see drivers that are some of the world's best. So I think, seeing these drivers on the same grid is always a nice thing. And I think, once again in the qualifying, Harry Spears proving his skill today.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of the BUSR. Like for me, when I was starting, now 2 years ago, my friends approached me and said, "Oh, you should join," and I said, "No, I'm too slow." And then I gave it a go, and I found my place in it, and I've managed to work my way up the field and develop my skills as a sim racer. And also, with that, I've developed my equipment, as you well know, Juuso. And a lot of my equipment has come from Hound, one of our sponsors. And they provide like that middle step for me. I bought their rig, or one of their more popular products are these here gloves, which are very useful when you're doing the old sim racing. And you can get 10% off with our code BUSR10 at simhounds.com and get 10% off everything on their store. And go check them out, because they make some quality items, made in the UK, if that's something that you're very passionate about. But it's something that I personally recommend with my experience.
All right. So looking ahead towards the race, Harry Spears on pole, Jacques Noer in second place, Anna Langsdorff-Foster in third, Jimmy Lin in fourth. That's the first two rows. Are we expecting fireworks? I mean, those McLarens up top, we've seen them come together. We've seen good pace from all of them, but now Jimmy Lin and Anna Langsdorff-Foster especially, they were very close to each other at Brands. In a different order. Now they've swapped around. What are we expecting here at Zolder? It's a tight first lap.
I think because it's so difficult to overtake here, because it's so tight, that everyone is going to be going for it in that first lap, because that's your best chance to get past someone. Otherwise, you can get stuck behind someone for a good 10, 20 laps. So Jacques has said that he's given Harry the win, but if he's going to try and go for it himself, then he's certainly going to send it in that first sector, I reckon. As for Anna and Jimmy behind, they're fighting it out. They're going to be fighting it tooth and nail all race, I reckon. And let's just hope that everyone gets through it cleanly.
That's what we're gonna be hoping for. Bentley, known for its launch, I talked about it at Brands as well. It does just go when you when the green light turns on. So I think, in my opinion, Harry might have the edge on Jack in the beginning, but we'll have to see. Obviously, the track does wind around, and it does the inside line changes all the time. But we are just about to head onto the formation lap. In fact, just about to just started as well, so we'll be there in just a second. Formation lap in these conditions, what is the standard plan here? What are these drivers doing? Obviously, it's a even slightly colder track. It's now 12 degrees, both track and ambient. 3 a.m., so it's pitch black as well. What is the strategy here?
I think they're going to be riding the brakes the whole way, trying to get temperature into those brakes, into the tires. A lot more weaving than maybe we're used to. But I think it'll be pretty slow formation lap. Just trying to get the heat into everything, mainly the brakes. That's the best way we know. in ACC to try and warm up those tyres, warm up those brakes, and that's what will be crucial going down into that first corner.
Yeah, definitely. As the pack's still single file going through the second sector right now. What I mean, with these cars being as equal as they are, especially in the midfield. I mean, we saw qualifying. I think the gap ended up being like 5/10 or something like that between most of the upper midfield. Are we going to see early strategy perhaps play a factor? I mean, in the last at Brands, we saw what 30 minutes of racing, 40 minutes of racing before the first scheduled pit stops that weren't effectively damage repairs. You think we might see something different here, or is it going to be similar strategies all around?
I think we're likely to see an undercut here early on. Maybe someone even coming in sort of the first 15 minutes if they get stuck behind someone in that traffic. Let's say they get knocked slightly wide at turn 1, lose a few positions, and then they're going to be trying to fight through the pack. But Brands is obviously difficult to pass at as well. So, like you say, maybe we won't see people coming in until that half an hour. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw people coming in a lot earlier than we were expecting.
All right, we are double file. Cars about to go through that last chicane. Any final drivers to pick out? Any drivers to watch?
I think, like I said in the intro, I'm going to be watching Nathan Carey. I think he's looking forward to this one, so we'll see what happens.
All right, so we are on to the main straight. Lights are about to go green. Harry Spears on pole position. Jack Nora lined up alongside and just about to cross that line, and we are green for the second round here at Zolder. Harry Spears has the inside, relatively clean in the midfield so far. A little bit of contact there as I didn't see who that was around, but
Looks to
one
be
car
Perkins.
around. Yeah, Perkins around in the Lexus, and that's the only real damage so far. The top half of the field has gone relatively cleanly. A couple positions made up from the Audis. Jason List trying to go up the inside of, I think that is Unstead there as well, and is able to get past as well. So that is a position for Jason List as well, as we now go through that first chicane. Those curbs could be deadly for many cars, but everyone seems to be relatively clean. A couple cars slowed down there. Josh Parrott being one of them is now forced to go alongside the Lamborghini of Oliver Fletcher. And there is contact, and that's Fletcher around into the wall at the second chicane, and that's going to be a massive amount of damage. We'll see if that ends up in the pit lane as well. Nathan Carey, you said one to watch, has made up a couple of positions now in 9th place for rookie, and Unstead now alongside into the hairpin. Unstead on the inside for rookie, giving plenty of space, maybe too much space, and has to concede that position, or actually leave at that position. And yeah, still relatively clean. A couple pieces of contact, but not too bad so far. McLaren's still able to stay up top, and yeah, it's close.
Yeah, I think the incident there between I think it was Perrott and Fletcher is a tricky one going over that crest, because you sort of get washed out to the outside of the corner. So it's unfortunate there for Fletcher as he comes into the pit to fix that damage.
That was Share around the outside of turn 1, and that opened the door up for Jason List as well. So Jimmy Lin almost conceding 2 positions at once there, was able to get back there. So that's Share making up quite a few positions in the first lap and a half, ending up in 4th place. Now Unstead on the tail of Jason List as they go through the first chicane. Oh, and that's Jason List around. That is too much curb. That second curb ends up being deadly, and that's the Ferrari spinning around, losing a couple positions there, as well as the cones go flying. Oh, contact there. This Lodge taking out, I believe, Nathan Carey there. And that is, I mean, yeah, that's what we are kind of used to seeing here. You can't go side by side around that chicane, or not very effectively anyway. So that's Nathan Carey losing out as a result of contact there with Lodge. And yeah, I think the stewards are going to have something to say. Jason List diving down the inside of Perkins there, and they go alongside now through the back straight. whatever you can call this. As they now go in towards the final chicane. Jason List on the outside. Is he being given any space? Not really, as Perkins is able to stay ahead. But Jason List not able to really get comfy with that Ferrari right now, and not able to get back into the position he was in. Had a really good start, but unfortunately incidents have cost him a little bit. And is that Cher in third place? That is. So Anna Langsdale Foster also forced to concede that third position. Cher, a great climb up to third place in the first couple laps.
He's going to have to defend going into the chicane, are they? No, just a bit too far back for Langsdale Foster there.
Oh, and that's someone
go off
around.
in the background.
That's Unstead. That's Unstead in the wall after the chicane. So, yeah, curbs, I mean, they are proving very, very deadly here today. But, yeah, what a climb from Cher. Able to get from, I believe that would have been 5th position into 3rd now. And showing a great amount of race pace. And I wonder if there's a little bit less fuel in that car, perhaps.
Yeah, like we said, I mean, the undercut is a powerful one, so maybe they've set up for that at the start of the race, putting a bit less into the car. And, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do going through the rest of the race.
Yeah, so we're seeing these 3 battle it out still. So, effectively, Cher has just climbed up one by one. No other real position changes within the top 5 there. But, yeah, we did see a couple cars get involved in incidents, and we'll probably be seeing stewards' decisions from those later on. So I think we saw Jason List there, a little bit of wiggle on the X, maybe to clean those tires out. Is that Nathan Carey going up the inside as well? And I think almost forces Lee wide there, but is able to make that position through. And I think that was would that have been the Audi as well? Unstead, yeah, going through at the same time. So battles all around right now.
Yeah, we're looking, obviously we've seen Cher has been the standout at the minute, gaining 3 places and being up in those podium positions. But also just a shout out to Josh Perrott and Jason, I think is it Jason or Josh Lodge? I apologise. They've both gained 4 positions, obviously because of some incidents in front of them, but they've managed to keep themselves clean in these first few laps, and they're up to 7th and 8th respectively.
Yeah, and I think these battles are going to keep going for quite a while as well. First pit stops have happened. So Oliver Fletcher, obviously we saw hit the wall on the first lap as a result of contact, I believe. Has pitted, so they'll be out of the pits just ahead of, just behind Harry Spears, in fact. And Ishan Wells also taking that first pit stop. Sorry, that was a sneeze that I forgot to mute for. Yeah, so first pit stops already. That's Jason List trying to go up the inside of Unstead. Will make contact at T1. A little bit of a push to pass. Unstead not happy with that one, flashing his lights, and I think that is something that might be handled by the stewards. We'll see if no, that is actually Jason List does let Unstead back through, so that will be that position handed back. And,
I think.
Yeah,
that's interesting to see. It was certainly a robust move from Jason List, and if he'd have driven off into the sunset, then I would have been annoyed as Unstead. But as a viewer, I wouldn't have been too miffed by that. But maybe we'd see some stewards' inquiries into that, because we know that this year the rulebook has been tightened up.
Yeah, obviously push to passes have been effectively outlawed, but it is up to the steward's discretion as to what constitutes as a push to pass, although I think that probably would have been counted as one, so I think Jason List probably would have been looking at a penalty for that one. But yeah, now we see all the McLarens all very close to each other. As I think they're catching. Yeah, so that's Fletcher having pitted, is now being lapped as well, as Jimmy Lin is forced to concede that position to I believe that's Faruqi there. So yeah, losing out and kind of tumbling down the order a little bit, Jimmy Lin. Maybe just not able to get to grips with the car on the race setup on high fuel.
Yeah, we know that some cars are affected a lot more by low fuel and high fuel than others. I know the Audi is particularly prone to feeling a bit more like its Audi Group counterpart, the Bentley, when it's got a full load of fuel on it. But yeah, the McLaren's another one where it's one of its main upsides is its nimble sort of cornering. But when you put a load of fuel in, as you can see, yeah, Jimmy Lynn's struggling there a bit on the brakes as we go into Villeneuve.
Yeah, definitely not happy with that car, but someone who seems to be a lot happier with their car compared to qualifying at least is Josh Parrott, right behind Jimmy Lin now, especially as a result of that little excursion into the sand pit. And yeah, I think Josh wasn't doing great in the first couple laps, but now seems to have been able to find his pace. And I know for a fact, at least, that the Mercedes is a very comfy car around here, as that is Jimmy Lin heading into the pits. So obviously gonna try and fix whatever the problem is, whether that's fuel or tires. So that does open up the 6th position for Josh Parrott. Yeah, it's good. Well, I would say recovery, but able to find his pace now.
Yeah, I think Josh has done a lot of endurance racing, and the thing with him is once he settles into a stint, he just starts pulling out the laps, and keeping it consistent is the main bit of his game, which obviously we saw from Jimmy Lin. He was struggling to do that, and even though this is a sprint race, consistency is key, as we seem to go a little bit wide there. But yeah, still chasing down the two McLarens ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's quite a contrast. We have to remember Jimmy Lin at Brands was extremely consistent, no problems whatsoever. As that is Fletcher, I believe, off, and that was into the pit lane and has actually retired, disconnected from the server. So that is the first retirement of the race. So I wonder if we'll hear what the exact reasoning was in the end. But that's Fletcher gone from Zolder, unfortunately. But yeah, no, Jimmy Lin at Brands was just incredibly consistent and was able to get the podium as a result. But now, just the complete opposite. So it's definitely, you can see the differences in the tracks affecting it.
Absolutely. I'm not sure. We said that Jimmy Lin has gone into the pits to see whether he can fix something, but I'm not sure what they've fixed by just being stopped for just 5 seconds. We're able to see on our screen here. So that would have just been fuel, I imagine, unless it was 5 seconds of damage that was really affecting them that much. But yeah, no tyre change there, so they still might have some issues.
Yeah, we'll have to see what that's about and if it's gonna help at all. Watching now at the battle between Unstead and Perkins. Obviously, Unstead had an incident off the curb, was in the wall a little bit on the first chicane. We've hit the first curb just a little bit too hard, but now is looking to overtake Perkins. And we know Unstead does have the better overall pace, but you mentioned how Zolder is not the easiest track to overtake, and the Lexus also not necessarily the easiest car to overtake, considering it's able to jump those curbs very smoothly, as you just saw there, and it has the straight line speed where it matters.
Absolutely. I mean, Unstead has been slightly quicker than Perkins in the speed trap, but unfortunately, to build on that, you need to get a good exit out of the corner beforehand. And so far, they haven't quite been close enough. But if they might get a run through here, as Perkins runs on the grass, but no, still keeps the speed as they head down towards the hairpin.
Yes, oh, the dive attempt there. Actually, Perkins giving a bit of room, actually being very conservative, being very careful. Probably the smart way to drive. Obviously, with 2 pit stops, you don't necessarily want to take an unnecessary spin because you defended slightly too hard. But yeah, no, Perkins just able to hold Unstead at bay, and obviously Unstead being forced to push very hard, and as a result there goes a little bit too wide. But here's Jason List and Nathan Carey. Both cars have had incidents, and Jason List obviously aggressively wants to get by, wants to go back up to the positions he feels he can be at. And I think without incidents, Jason List could be holding that 5th position even. So definitely a bit out of position as a result.
Yeah, similar to the other two we were just watching, List is the faster of these two drivers, but just as long as Nathan can keep on his lines and keep barreling around the track, then he should be able to keep him behind, because as you can see there, he's got a much better exit out of that first chicane, as they head down towards Villeneuve.
Yeah, and that was despite having a little bit of a drift as well. So obviously just that much more stable. But we also have to remember both these drivers had an incident as a result of the curb. Ferrucchi tries to go for a move on Langston Foster, not able to get through there. But we talk about the effect of those curbs and especially the confidence. Obviously, when you've had an incident on those curbs, your confidence going over them for the rest of the race might not be the same. And obviously, you've raced this track quite a lot of times as well. How would you react after an incident there? Can you try and take the same lines? Are you suddenly more careful? Is that going to cost you lap time just as a result of the loss of confidence?
You will be more careful just because you don't want to, risk that extra inch that maybe, during practice you've hit it 100 times and, you were fine 100 times, but then come to the race, you hit it 3 times and then you go off on one of them and then you just think, is it worth it? Is it worth it in this race for me to be taking that, maybe 1/10 of a second per lap? Where's the difference there?
Yeah, as we see now, 2 battles at once, very close, both these battles, and we're seeing both of them like have very different lines going into the chicane. We're seeing the battle between the McLarens, both of them kind of avoiding that first curb, or at least trying to avoid that first curb while not hitting the second curb whatsoever. Whereas the battle on your screen, on a screen, whatever it's, picture-in-picture, that's what it was called. The picture-in-picture, we see Nathan Carey previously just hop over that second curb, no problem whatsoever. That's Ferrucchi into the pits. So I believe this was a choice. And obviously, when you do go into the pits, you don't brake at the same position. So that was probably a very, very spooked Anna Langsdorff-Foster there.
I think given how close Ferrucchi was there, I'm not sure it was premeditated. I think it was using, a bit of the runoff that they've given you there and just gone, oh yeah, I meant to go into the pits there. That's exactly what I was trying to do. So we'll see what they do with their stop here, and then see whether Langsdorff-Foster reacts.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Another interesting thing to note here now is that Cher's gap to Anna Langsdorff-Foster is already about 6 seconds. So considering the qualifying performance of Anna Langsdorff-Foster being way above basically the rest of the midfield, it is very interesting to see that the race pace is just not panning out. But there, exactly in this camera angle, you just saw the very big difference between the two lines on the first chicane. We saw Jason List effectively not take any curb there at all, whereas Nathan Carey just jumps over them, no problem. And that is the really big difference between these two cars here, and the two types of cars.
Yeah, and I think it's something that I noticed when we were doing one of our casual events, the Global Excursion.
Contact there.
Yeah, that different cars have their pace in different ways, and I was behind Jack Noller in the McLaren at Brands Hatch, and I was fast through all the corners, but on the straights I just couldn't get past. And you can see, as we see List dive into the pits, I think that one might have been on purpose, because this is the undercut we were talking about.
Yeah.
That List is clearly fed up of being stuck behind that BMW. So they're going to try and use the undercut and get past Nathan Carey. It will be interesting to see whether Carey reacts here, or whether they'll stay out and just stick to their own race.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting in general. Obviously, we did also see Jimmy Lin with his first pit stop earlier is actually quite far ahead of Ferrucchi. So whatever the pit stop was for Ferrucchi, I believe it would have been.
Ferrucci appears to have just stopped for fuel again. Same
yeah,
as
13
Lin.
seconds. So yeah, it's Jimmy Lin actually was able to get quite a big benefit off of those pit stops. at least compared to Furuki. So we'll see how that plays out in the second run of pit stops as well, as Jimmy Lin does actually comes out ahead of Jason List as well. So that pit stop actually might have worked out well for Jimmy Lin.
Yeah, it's a 6-second difference between their pit stops. So Lin, what is the gap between the two of them? Can you see?
Not right now. The gap between Jimmy Lin and nope, doesn't really show up yet.
List.
But
More than 6 seconds. So
well, it's about 20 seconds right now, as far as I
yeah.
can tell. Yeah.
So there's still a long way for List to try and get back into that top 5, because we think Lin will be around sort of the top 5. So we'll see whether List can climb up there. But it appears as if Nathan Carey's carried on round for another lap, so it doesn't look like he's reacting to Jason List. So I think he knows that that's not his race today.
No, I don't think so. And also the thing that this does give, as Perkins also in the pit lane as well, the thing that this does do is that a lot of the drivers now have been able to get a bunch of clear air as a result. I think because the battles basically have been broken up. All the battles that were going on, in each pair, one of them has pitted now and has moved into clear air. So unless you're contending with traffic in terms of faster traffic coming from behind you, at this stage, all the drivers have effectively just gained a lot of clear air and the ability to now maximize their pace as much as possible.
Yeah, I think we're certainly seeing people try and put in their fastest laps of the race at the minute, just to try and, protect themselves from those pit stops. And yeah, that's so important here at Zolder, as we know, because as we've seen, it's very difficult to pass.
Yeah, definitely. As we talked about this traffic there, as Harry Spears goes through, and Furuki takes advantage of that one, goes up the inside of Lee there, and takes back that 10th position. Lee obviously hasn't pitted yet, not quite in the same race as Furuki, so a bit of an opportunistic move, but a good one nonetheless.
Yeah, and we've just seen Ishan Wells has picked up a 5-second penalty. Not sure what that's for. I imagine was he involved in that lap one? Yeah, that lap one collision, turn one collision with List. So unfortunate there for Ishan, but it was maybe a little bit harsh for lap one, but someone's got to pay the price.
Yeah, and obviously relatively consistent with other small contacts like that, as Perkins did actually make that move stick there, and Ishan did try a switchback, but not able to work there. But a little bit of a poor exit from Perkins does potentially open up the door for Ishan. Goes up the inside as they go alongside on the main straight. Now into turn one, Ishan on the inside line. Doesn't force anyone wide. Actually, Perkins takes a really wide line in general, but now has the inside line into turn two. And Ishan is actually forced to concede, not able to keep that position. And it's good to see battling even at this part of the grid.
Yeah, it's good racing between the two of them. They could maybe give each other a little bit more of a squeeze, but I think better to err on the side of caution here at the minute, yes. Especially with we got one of the leaders coming up there now to.
I think that was Anna Langsdale Foster behind them, about to lap them. So yeah, we'll see if she's able to get through.
I'm not sure which one is more terrifying, when you're being lapped or lapping. Because when you're being lapped, I know for me, I don't want to take out the leaders. That's the last thing I want to do. But then obviously when you are the car that's lapping, you never really know what the person in front's going to do.
With personal experience, I can tell you that taking out the leading pack is actually completely fine. In the end, it's their responsibility to make that safe overtake. So, yeah, I would say it's much scarier to be the lapping car, because you don't necessarily know what the car ahead of you is going to do. You want to tell them to do something specific, but until you really know what how everyone behaves in that situation, it can be a little bit of an unpredictable game of chicken.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we are still in that phase of the championship. We're only 2 rounds in. There's a few new faces, but yeah, by the end of the championship, they'll all know each other inside out. And yeah, hopefully, we'll see less and less incidents. But obviously, there we go. You know, Anna Langsdale-Foster there getting through relatively cleanly. Obviously, went a little bit deep in the hairpin, just making sure that she got past. She got past Ishan Wells there.
Yeah, and that does open up the gap a little bit, but that's part of racing here. It does allow Perkins a little bit of breathing room, but also conversely, Anna Langsdale-Foster obviously wants to get through as fast as possible because behind her is Josh Parrott, and while Parrott hasn't really been able to catch on pace, an incident with a lapping car being slowed down a little bit, and all of a sudden that 3-second gap could become 1 second, and suddenly you're forced to defend. So always something to be mindful of when you're lapping traffic. And for anyone new to GT racing or BUSR in general, lap traffic does not need to move out of the way. They don't need to. Effectively, they don't need to move out of the way. Blue flags are advisory. They're not allowed to defend an overtake from a lapping car, but generally you try and work together to get the smoothest possible overtake.
Yeah, as we head on board here with Josh, as he's got the prime seat here to watch the 2 ahead maybe battle it out, but Ishan losing a little bit of time there as we go through turn 2. But yeah, he's going to be. This will be slightly frustrating having 2 cars in between himself and Anna Langsdale-Foster, but you know, once they get past all, I think that was a little bit of sideways action there from Perkins, and Ishan does take advantage. Josh not happy though.
Oh, Josh decides
Ooh,
that he does
Stens.
not want the battle. He just wants to go through and a firm, aggressive move. And obviously Perkins probably a bit miffed about that one, losing a bit more time than he probably would have wanted as a result. But yeah, so Josh asserting that he wants to get through, and yeah, I mean, that is something you have to do at times, though. Anyone experienced with endurance racing will know that sometimes you do just have to be firm. You just have to go for it, because otherwise you'll just lose time. I mean, and in general in GT racing, that car, he's entitled to their line. As actually Josh heads into the pits, and if I was Perkins right now, I would be very annoyed.
Yeah, it's certainly frustrating because, you know, just as soon as you've been passed, it's the best opportunity to try and get back past the person who's just overtaken you, because, you know, they're slightly out of their rhythm. You know, they're not necessarily not sure what you're going to do behind them. But yeah, unfortunately, I think the opportunity was taken away from Perkins there. But, you know, for this battle for Josh, you know, you can smell that 4th place and maybe even a podium. You never know what will happen. But so every second counts, and yeah, it's just one of those things in GT racing, especially here at Zolder.
Yeah, any track where it's difficult to overtake, you're gonna want to be very aggressive with that. But yeah, now we're starting to see the first. I mean, probably not necessarily an undercut pit stop, just a normal scheduled pit stop. And I think now that we're starting to see a lot of these, it might actually start to force more reactions from the top of the midfield. I mean, Anna Langsdale-Foster, generally not known as a very reactionary driver when it comes to the pit stops, will generally follow her own strategy. But in this case, we'll see what she decides to do. The gap between herself and Cher, for example, right now, Cher in a comfortable 3rd position. There might become a time where Anna Langsdale-Foster has to start thinking about how she's going to get through. But ahead now, we're seeing Faruqi and Lynn getting quite close to each other, and Faruqi's been catching up very quickly. So maybe Jimmy Lynn's problem's not all over just yet.
Yeah, as we see, yellow flag for Anna Langsdale-Foster. I think they've just been off at turn 1, which is not going to help them at all with this battle for the podium and the top spots. Just recovering as we go through turn 2 and 3.
Yeah,
But
10 seconds extra on the gap.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any damage because there's a lot of gravel for there for her to run into. But yeah, I think obviously it's the only thing that's going to be damaged. Hopefully, is their pride. Not hopefully damaged, obviously, but we don't want the car to be damaged. But as you say, yeah, I raced a lot with Anna in the previous couple of seasons where we brought in these new pit rules where it's just refueling only, not necessarily a set of tires. And we often had extremely different strategies, and we'd run our own race until the end, and then I think I was the one that was usually quite reactionary to her strategy. So yeah, I think Anna's the kind of driver to just run her own race, trust her pace, and just get on with the job and see where it comes out at the end. But yeah, that 10-second drop in that lap isn't going to help at all.
Yeah, it was actually just about 5 seconds. But I did look at the timing board slightly wrong. But either way, 5 seconds is actually quite a big difference here when they've been running within 10 seconds of each other for quite a while. It is quite a large margin there. But coming back into this battle, Lin and Faruqi, it's an interesting situation where Lin obviously qualified quite high, except effectively where we expected, and Faruqi, especially at Brands, just wasn't really able to show the pace we're kind of used to getting from him, whereas Jimmy Lin was potentially even faster than what we're used to. And now we're seeing kind of an opposite situation where Jimmy Lin qualified fine, Faruqi maybe even a disappointing qualifying, but now in the race is, well, obviously battling for the position and is actually faster on track now than Jimmy Lin. So, and that's a mistake from Jimmy Lin, allowing Faruqi onto the outside. And around turn 2, Jimmy Lin still has the inside. Faruqi forced to take a wide line and forced to concede that position back again, not able to get through there. But again, a small little mistake, and that's almost the position given over.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw some brilliant angles there, the side by side of the two different cameras there, and that's one thing we've been able to see with our fabulous broadcast team here at BUSR. And we've also managed to send some of our guys off to some excellent opportunities with sim staff, who are a sim racing and esports events staffing sort of company, who are able to provide staff to events for, I'm just repeating myself, for sim racing and esports. And we've managed to provide some excellent opportunities, and so are they. So if that's something that you want to get into, careers in this kind of thing, then head over to simstaff.net/careers and check out their open positions at the minute. And yeah, you too could be working on a project like this or something even bigger and better.
That is correct. And also on Discord as well, busr.gg/Discord, and we have a channel dedicated for that if you prefer as well. Coming back into this battle, Perkins and Asian Wells. I mean, we saw this battle be affected by the traffic a little bit, but it does look like Perkins now actually back ahead of Asian Wells. So that move has happened at some point. Obviously, Asian Wells still carrying that 5-second penalty, but with how close these two cars are running and how they're able to catch each other all the time, I'm not sure that 5-second penalty is gonna play a massive factor. But speaking of 5-second penalties, Jason List 5-second penalty as well for an incident, and I wonder if that's the push to pass we saw. Yeah, if it's been confirmed by production, so that was the push to pass, and
I think that's
a bit of a
incredibly harsh.
Yeah.
Gave back the position. Maybe, I mean, obviously we haven't seen the replays, but perhaps, when we said, he's given the position back, it was actually a mistake that we saw. But yeah, I think List isn't going to be happy with that. It will help, perhaps, Carey. I'm not sure what the gap will be when Carey comes out of the pits. We saw they were obviously very close together. Very close there between Ishan and Lee there. Was it Perkins? Sorry, I do apologise. Will Ishan go for the move as we go into the chicane? I doubt it.
Yeah, a little bit too far there. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible how quickly we saw multiple seconds be the difference in the pit stops between a lot of these cars. Actually, with Lin and Furuki, there was a 13-second difference. Sorry, it was an 8-second difference between the pit stops themselves. And Furuki was able to catch Lin very, very quickly. And we're seeing all these battles basically just come back as soon as everyone's done with their pit stops. So that does bode well for the latter half of the race. As a little bit of a mistake from Jimmy Lin there, as that allows Furuki alongside, but is forced all the way onto the outside. Now has the inside going into the Villeneuve chicane, but has to back out. Doesn't want to risk anything, and that does allow Jimmy Lin to hold on to 8th on track right now.
Yeah, Lin just holding that inside line, managed to get the shorter run down to the corner, which made all the difference there, I think, because just gave Furuki a little bit too much to do on the brakes. But yeah, I think it won't be long before we see Furuki maybe try and pull off that move.
I think any little mistake is going to be the one that costs us. There's inches between these two cars around around in the braking zones, and really just any mistake can cost. But one thing that I think we haven't really touched on yet is that this battle is going to cost both of these drivers quite a lot of time in their battle for the 3rd, 4th, 5th position. So what this is doing is it's really playing into the hands of Anna Langsdale Foster, Joe Scher, even Lodge and Nathan Carey, who
side
are
by side through Villeneuve.
yeah, we were talking about that.
How have they managed that? I'm surprised they've come out in one piece there. Carey's going to get the inside line going into the hairpin now. Is he going to go for it up the inside? I think, after that bit of contact, there's going to be no space given. Oh, there is a little bit. That's very nice from Nathan there. But I think, will we see him send it up the inside going to the chicane? I think he's got every right to.
Still in the toe, and Lodge has the outside. I think Nathan Carey backs out of that one. Has to basically back out to avoid contact. Harry Spears now behind them, putting his own spice into the mix as well. So we'll see if that's going to affect things at all. Obviously, again, cars don't need to dodge as a little bit of a dust cloud kicked up by. Ooh, that's a move from Harry Spears. Obviously, has the right to do that, but Nathan Carey, well, I was aware of it. Luckily, didn't turn in, didn't cause an incident there. There's more dust being kicked up by the cars ahead as well. So this is a prime example of some of the aggressive lapping you do have to do at times when you are the faster driver. So Lodge there does go onto the outside.
I think that might have been a mistake from Lodge. Is that a good place to let them through?
Oh,
I think Carey's going to get a good run as we go down to the hairpin now, just as long as he gets the line right. But I think Lodge has managed to defend that quite well somehow.
I think Nathan Carey was forced to back out a little bit, and as their Perkins on up the inside of Ishan Wells as well, able to get through as another battle all the way across the rest of the track, as Jason List now tries to get alongside Josh Parrott. Parrott goes up to the middle of the track, able to defend going into the first chicane, and that's really the only overtaking opportunity for a while, especially with no mistake here from Josh Parrott. Now side by side in the picture-in-picture. They go up the main straight.
I think that's.
That's
Unstead pushing against Carey now. Because
Nathan Carey,
he was just behind Harry Spears as he was coming through to lap them, and then when Harry sort of sent it, I think not entirely intentionally, going into turn 2, Unstead was able to come back at Carey quite quickly. So this obviously cost him time to lodge ahead, but yeah, we'll see what happens with these three. I think this is quite an interesting battle.
Well, it's a very close train of cars so far. Obviously, Harry Spears now able to run away from this, but it's the closest battle we have right now. And also with Nathan Carey kind of losing out there, hasn't been able to get as close to Lodge, but we're seeing the battles on 2 different laps as well, because up ahead we see Perkins and Nishan Wells very close together. There's a
Another chance.
little bit of a mistake, maybe. Goes up the inside now, alongside into the hairpin we go. Lodge still has the inside. Nathan Carey will use that. Oh, doesn't, goes a little bit loose there on the exit, and not able to get the power down on the BMW M4, and they're braking. A little bit of a dive. No, that's actually pit stops. So Lodge and Unstead both pitting there, and Nathan Carey now, will he be forced to react? Is he going to react, or is he going to take the clear air?
I think he needs to react with these 2 lapped cars ahead as well. He's going to lose time, so if he doesn't want to lose those positions or lose that position to Unstead, then I think he needs to come into the pits this lap.
Yeah, and these 2 lapped cars, Ishan Wells and Perkins, they've been giving us a
5-second penalty.
Oh, so that's as a result of contact earlier, I believe.
Contact with Lodge, it looks like.
Yeah. So, I mean, Ishan Wells now lets Nathan Carey through. Obviously content with being able to catch Perkins back up very easily, but yeah, that's gonna affect things quite a bit. I think we might be seeing another. That was the 5-second penalty for contact. I wonder when that happened.
Yeah, I mean we might not have seen it pop up, because as we saw with the incident with List, it doesn't necessarily cause a yellow flag, but that's going to really affect Nathan's race for the rest of the, well, obviously the rest of the race, because how close he is with Lodge and Unstead. He could be ahead of them, but he very easily drop down 2 positions just with that 5-second penalty.
Yeah, really needs to get going here. That's Unstead actually overtaking Lodge in the pit stop, or in the pit lane. So a better pit stop cycle for Unstead allows him to get into, I believe that is 9th position. So yeah, that's an interesting development actually, because Unstead was the last driver out of that train of 3 cars, so had a faster pit stop either as a result of actually long pit stops for both drivers. So Unstead with a 42-second pit stop, Lodge with a 44-second pit stop. So damage repairs for both, but Unstead with just a little bit less, actually able to jump Lodge.
Yeah, I think they're both fixing damage that they've picked up throughout the start of this race, and yeah, it's just Lodge had a little bit more damage, it seems. Maybe that was from the Carey incident. So it'll be interesting to see where these guys all shake out by the end of the race, as Josh Perrott is now taking his 2nd pit stop of the race, first driver to do so. So it'll be interesting. He's going long on these. I assume he would have changed tyres in that last stop.
Yes, that was a
33-second pit stop, so that's almost certainly tyres. So going a little bit longer on this set, 48 minutes. We might see some drivers not go quite so long. We may even see some not changing tyres at all. I know that was something I liked to do, but that was before 1.8 came out. So yeah, it'll be a tough end of the race, I think, for Perrott here.
Yeah, no, definitely. And another driver that has taken a pit stop as well, Joe Scher from 3rd position, has boxed and has stopped for quite a long time as well, as we see Faruqi and Jack Noller now into the pits as well. So the first of the front runners now into the pits. We'll see if that affects things. Joe Scher's pit stop 36 seconds, so that's tires and some amount of damage repair as well. So yeah, we're just now reaching the halfway point of the race, a couple minutes out, and the first pit stops coming in. I think this is what we consider to be the standard strategy, would you say?
Yeah, I think the favoured strategy in previous seasons has been get to halfway through the race, have a change of tyres, fill up, and then in the last sort of 5 minutes, you take that splash and dash to fulfill that 2nd pit stop. That was certainly the favoured strategy before, but we're seeing a lot of lot of variation this season, I have to admit, that we're not necessarily used to seeing.
No, and it's great to see though. Obviously, we love to see variation. We love to see creativity, especially when it comes to strategy. I think Jacques last season was one of the really really creative strategists, if that makes sense. When in his racing, was forced a lot of the leaders to well, effectively adapt and react to his strategy. And I think something we could see later on in this race as well is whether a lot of these drivers will react to each other now after the first pit stops. So even if the first pit stop is standard, that last pit stop generally would be taken in the last 10 minutes, as you said, or 15 minutes, as you said. But that can always change. I mean, we've seen drivers take 2 pit stops in 2 consecutive laps. We've seen drivers take it, maybe 10 minutes or even 20 minutes before the end to go for fastest lap times. So, or bait fastest lap times, which actually at Brands gave Jacques the win in the end, the strategy call. So we'll see. Obviously, the gap between Harry Spears, Jacques not as not small enough really for that right now. But I think in the midfield, especially, we could be seeing quite a few strategy calls like that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about the format we have here in BUSR is that there's so many other race series on ACC, and pretty much always we see Josh Lodge going a little bit wide there in the dirty air, perhaps. But one of the things I like about this series is that you don't get from many other ACC series in particular is that most other series are like the strategy is defined and limited to you do an hour, you come in for tyres, and then you go out again. And you don't really have to do anything to do with fuel, unless you're really try-harding and want to cut it down to as little as possible. But it's basically driven by the tyres. Whereas here, you don't necessarily have to take tyres, and that's a bit of a risk. Like I said earlier, with me and Anna Langsdale Foster in previous seasons, Anna would always take tyres. I wouldn't. I was often slower at the end of the race, and she'd be attacking me. That's something that you see, these different strategies that you don't necessarily get in other series that I love so much about BUSR.
Yeah, definitely agree with that one. It's always really nice to see. And it's always nice to talk to all the drivers afterwards. That's something that we have a really good situation in sim racing in general, is the accessibility to drivers. Is we can just go and chat to them after the race. We can get their insight on the strategy calls, their insight on incidents, which isn't always necessarily the most peaceful conversation, obviously. But Harry Spears now into the pits. So that is the leader into the pits for the first time, just a couple laps after Jack Noller as well. Will be quite fine in terms of position, I believe. Let me check what the gap was. Yeah, so the gap to Anna Langsdale Foster was about a minute. So Harry Spears should be out of the pits in first place, and no problem there. But yeah, the unparalleled access that sim racing has to its drivers to get all the insights possible, even mid-race sometimes, is something that is one of the great things about sim racing in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get greater access to a lot of data that's pretty freely available in sim racing that compared to obviously real world motorsport, but you get that same competition. But if you're a nerd for stats, then this is the perfect place for you.
Definitely. And just looking at some of those stats that we're talking about currently, the SimHound fastest lap holder is Harry Spears with a 26.9. So almost as good as the qualifying time, as we see some beautiful camera work from our observer today, Jack. And Jason List there going through the Villeneuve chicane as well. And that's also something we've talked about things we don't get in traditional motorsports, we can get in sim racing is, beautiful shots like that. Obviously, flying a drone that close to a car flying around might not be the best idea in traditional motorsports, but here, that drone is actually invisible, as Jason lists now diving into the pits as well. So we can get things like that, and we can enjoy these.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've used drones at the Nordschleife before for the 24, but they're miles off. So maybe if certain drone companies want to sponsor something, maybe sponsor sim racing because it's just better.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, feel free to get in contact with the BUSR. Contact at busr.gg. Hint, hint. But yeah, no. Moving on from that, some of the front runners now pitting. Interestingly, or interesting thing to note here. So Jimmy Lin and Joe Scher, 4th and 5th position. Jimmy Lin basically holding 3rd position on track, depending on Anna Langsdale Foster's pit stop. And that's interesting to see because we saw Scher have incredible pace in the beginning of the race, able to
Nola's
overtake
off at
multiple
turn
drivers. Ooh, that's
Have they picked up any damage because they were quite close to the wall there? It's difficult to see in the dark.
I think, was there another car involved as well? I think Furuki was a white flag there for a moment. And I wonder if they were involved there. We might be seeing that later on. But interestingly enough, that does actually give... Oh no, the gap to Anna Langsdale Foster still within the pit stop. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting development. But it does kind of kill Noah's chances of getting within that pit stop window of Harry Spears as well, though.
Yeah, and I think one thing that annoyed me a little bit is that Nathan, Carey, and List, this battle that I was keen on looking at, is this a replay or are we just seeing him go through the corner again? Oh,
That's a replay. So, just a little bit of
just got that
overcorrection.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about the strengths of different cars. One of the strengths of the McLaren is that rear end grip, and it just suddenly seemed to let go a little bit there. So I think Nola asking a little bit too much of it there. So it's going to be close with Anna Langsdale Foster now as to see who comes out in front. Not sure where Anna's pit box is. Oh, yeah, it's right at the end. So I think Jack's going to be safe there.
Jack's plenty safe there, but obviously race pace difference right now is just too big. I mean, looking at just purely the fastest laps, Jack Norris had about a second quicker in the fastest lap for compared to Anna Langsdale Foster. But the real question here is Jimmy Lin. Oh, actually, no, Jimmy Lin pitting as well. So we're not going to see the conclusion of, the resolution of that battle for a little bit here. But with Jimmy Lin pitting now, being the last of the top, first of the top of the midfield, as Furuki's off at T4. I wonder what's happened there as we see him actually in the background of this shot here from onboard Josh Parrott. Returns on track without any further incident. But yeah, that's really interesting. And this is Furuki's already pitted the last time. And that's side by side into the chicane. Actually, Josh Parrott forced to go wide and not happy about that one whatsoever. A little bit of a flash of the lights towards Furuki there. That's a really interesting situation because Furuki... Oh, that's contact between Parrott and Perkins. Parrott actually pushes Perkins back around the correct way. So actually both drivers lose very little time there. I wonder if that was contact that initiated that spin or whether Perkins was spinning on his own. But Parrott actually makes that a lot less... Well, a lot less bad for Perkins than it could have been.
Yeah, I think it was a little tap. Obviously, Josh is trying to chase down Furuki after seeing the McLaren driver go wide. I think it's quite an easy thing to go wide at that turn 4, and just getting a little bit too eager, trying to get past this slower car. Even though they are on the same lap, so they've got the same racing rules as anyone else. But yeah, I think Parrott is expected to be past Perkins at this point in the race, but I think we could be seeing a penalty coming their way if the previous decisions from the stewards been anything to go by today.
Yeah, and obviously we did see Barrett let Perkins back by after that as well. So we'll see if that plays any factor into it. Probably, again, I mean, we did see Jason List earlier still get a penalty. So we'll see what happens here as they probably, are they going to try and go alongside? No, Josh, not quite close enough into the chicane. Actually, Perkins goes wide, but then turns into Josh. That's slightly confusing of a situation, but Parrot either way through into chicane, and on his way to catching Fruki.
Yeah, I think we're getting to that point in the race with it being in the dark. We saw it from Fruki, we saw it from Nola, maybe a little bit from Josh as well. We might start to see some mistakes creep in. They've been on track now for, including qualifying, for over an hour. It's dark. It's a lot of them have been by themselves since the pit stops, so you may start to see that concentration just drop a little bit. But hopefully we won't see any more incidents as a result of it, as we see Carey coming up against Lynn.
Yeah, so this is Lynn having pitted for the second time as well. So still about, I think he's on his second lap now, so tires should be relatively comfortable. So we'll see what he's able to do here in defense against Nathan Carey. Still yet to pit, owes a pit stop, but is looking quite racy right now.
Yeah, I think we've seen Carey on the defence a lot today, so it's nice to see him maybe on the attack a little bit here with Lynn, despite obviously being that pit stop behind.
Obviously, all of the drivers will fight for every position, no matter the pit stop. So definitely not going to be caring too much about that pit stop difference, as it seems to be far better under braking than M4. Is that the M4? No, it is the M4.
It is.
Yeah. So it seems to be a lot better under braking compared to the McLaren of Jimmy Lynn, but with the hard braking zones not being necessarily the best overtaking opportunities on this track, considering they're almost all of them in towards a chicane. It's a tough ass to overtake that McLaren.
Yeah, the important thing here about getting the overtake done is, perhaps more so than any other track on the calendar, is just getting that exit, because you need to be right up close to them in a very short space of time. As we see, I think Carey didn't get necessarily a better exit, probably the same kind of exit as Lynn there, and just the slipstream brought them closer, but not close enough to push under the brakes.
Yeah, and behind them, Jack Miller. I think Jimmy Lynn actually took a real weird approach there. I think maybe being careful of Nathan Carey there.
Yeah, I think by the looks of it, Carey was a little bit late on the brakes and then tried to avoid the incident. And thankfully, Jimmy Lynn was somewhat compliant with that and gave him that inside line to effectively just slow the car down before then pulling away. And now Nola's in the middle of them. I think that opportunity might have gone, and we may see Nathan come into the pits now anytime soon.
Yeah, probably not this lap, but we'll see. Obviously, that gap now is going to grow for a little bit.
Perrett has picked up a 15-second penalty for that incident with Perkins.
So heavy penalty there for Perrett, and I mean, this is something we can actually discuss. We have had quite a few rule changes coming into this season, including that of harsher penalties for contact. This was stressed to the drivers in the drivers' briefing, at least in the first race. I'm unsure if it was in this race, but I assume so. And with the stricter rules on contact in general, and the not the outright removal, but the effect of the so-called gentleman's rule, I believe has been lessened. Don't quote me on that though. I don't remember the rule book by heart right now. But with stricter rules on contact, I think we're starting to see it a little bit, and there's always debate on what constitutes as a harsh penalty and what doesn't, but consistency always being key. I mean, 15 seconds for the contact we saw. I think if it wasn't for the secondary contact which pushed Perkins around, we would have seen Perkins effectively fully around, as we see the that was Cher. So that's Cher at the second chicane spun around, and that's going to cost him quite a bit. And Axel Foster able to get through. But yeah, no, contact rules being quite harsh. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this? Actually, has been reduced to 5 seconds.
It looks like it's been reduced to
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Okay. I think that's a little closer to fair, especially when you put it next to the instance with List and that earlier. I think one thing with the new rule book that is a bit of a shame is, as you say, that the gentleman's agreement that we call it, is that now that's been lessened. That is a bit of a shame, because I do like to see it, like, when you're racing someone, or you're in an open lobby or whatever it is, and you might get into an incident. If you see the driver waiting up for you, then I feel like the bad blood is gone a little bit there. It's like, I can see that you think you did wrong, and we're like, that's fine. Obviously, we've both lost time. That can be the end of it. But one thing that that sort of gentleman's agreement rule doesn't necessarily take into consideration is Perkins would have got quite a lot of damage from that incident, that is obviously hidden, and then loses maybe 10, maybe even 15 seconds in the pit lane, or per lap. So sometimes you can get hit in the rear, like we were talking about the McLaren earlier, with its rear stability. If you get a tap from the rear, you might not necessarily lose a position, but you lose all pace in the car if you can't rely on that rear downforce. As we see Joe Cher just there trying to get back to his third place that he's held really well throughout this race. So we'll see how this battle plays out. But yeah, I think one thing, the hidden aspect of an incident is the damage that you pick up from it, and the pace you might lose from it. But I think it is a bit of a shame to see that sort of gentleman's agreement not have so much weight to it, because I think as we go through the season, we'll start seeing more drivers just get more of that sort of bump and run mentality, where they'll just give someone a tap and then they'll just say, well, I'm going to get a penalty anyway, so I may as well just drive off.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we'll probably we'll get some drivers' opinions on that in the future for you guys, just to get a little bit more opinions, and we'll see what comes of that. So Joe Cher and Axel Foster, I mean, we saw this battle in the beginning of the race, where Cher was able to get past and eventually hold third position with quite a comfortable gap. But now both of them, one pit stop in, obviously an incident for Cher of some kind in turn 1, I believe. No, sorry, that was at the second chicane. Apologies there. And now Cher finds himself behind Axel Foster. Is looking very aggressive. You can tell just by watching that he is pushing that car, pushing as much as he can to try and get back ahead. And Axel Foster been relatively consistent today. Maybe wasn't expecting to have to defend quite as hard.
Yeah, a lot of curb there by the Audi, but still managed to get the drive there. And I think these two, they've both had an incident, so they've both been clearly pushing throughout the race to try and get this third place, this final step on the podium, which is perhaps the only one that is up for grabs this season, because we've seen just the sheer pace of Harry Spears and Jack Noller up at the front. But yeah, this is certainly going to be a good battle. I hope we can see it right until the end of the race.
Yeah, definitely. And still about half an hour now to go. Still quite a few drivers without their final pit stops. Jimmy Lin, currently the fastest driver that has completed all their pit stops. And Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see where those final pit stops will put people. But now that we're approaching, oh, a mistake from Anna Langston Foster does defend and gets very close to share there as they go through the second part of the complex. Anna Langston Foster defends to the inside, able to make the corner just fine, and just Cher just not able to get the launch. And now extremely close. Does go up the inside, but Anna Langston Foster already there defending side by side into the chicane, forced to concede the first part of the corner. A little bit of a tap there into the rear corner of the McLaren, and that kind of gives that opportunity up. Anna Langston Foster able to defend, but a small mistake set off that entire series of events.
Yeah, and absolutely brilliant racing between the two of them. I think, just Anna Langsdale Foster, she was just slowing all the wrong bits of the track for Cher behind them. So that's the frustrating part, is that obviously there was a mistake that was made, and it was just, they got the run throughout the exit of Villeneuve, but the car was, Anna's car was just slightly in the way. So, each and every step, Anna's managed to place that car absolutely perfectly so far.
Yeah, and it's we're seeing this. We're seeing the difficulty of the overtakes on this track as we see a couple more cars in the pits. Unstead and Lee taking their final pit stops. But we're look, you can see good shot from the helicam how narrow this track truly is, and how there really isn't a lot of space to go, well, to overtake. Especially if you put that car in the middle of the track, there's barely a car's width on either side. And, at some point you have to commit to a side. And obviously, as the defending car, you're only allowed that one move. But most of the time, if you can defend to the inside, you'll probably defend to the inside. And as you do it early enough, as Anna Langston Foster did there, it's very difficult to go past on a chicane. And that's exactly what Anna Langston Foster was relying on there. Just planting the car at the apex of the corner. And where is that Audi going to go?
Yeah, I think, as you're saying, with the nature of this track, it certainly rewards defensive driving. And Anna Langsdale Foster is one of our most experienced drivers here at BUSR. She's got, I think, upwards of almost 1,000 hours in the game at this point. Competing in, I think, her 7th season with BUSR. So she certainly knows where to put the car, and we've seen that so far. So it's going to be difficult for Cher to get past her, I think.
Yeah, and the interesting question here is, at what point does Cher decide that, right, I've had enough, I'm going to take my pit stop? Because, both these cars still owe us a pit stop. And, yeah, we're still 20, 25 minutes into the race. Neither of these drivers is most likely going to take new tires. They both have taken new tires at some point in the race. So, just had to confirm that. Yeah, both did take tires on their first pit stop. So neither is going to take tires on the next pit stop. So it really is going to be just that splash and dash. And, stopping on your marks, doing it at the right time is going to be extremely important. But also, at what point do you pull the trigger here? 20 minutes left. You don't want to go too early. You don't want to end up behind slower cars. You don't want to end up in traffic. So, yeah, it's an interesting strategy decision both these drivers have to make, but something they might be forced to make soon as there's a little bit of traffic ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, you say with that splash and dash is that one thing, again, people don't necessarily take into consideration is that each litre of fuel is like 0.3 of a second. So how much do you want to risk maybe underfueling the car slightly just to make sure that you get that track position? Because here, as we've seen, track position is really important. As Ulrich goes off there, a little bit of a distraction there for Anna. But, you can take that risk, which, again, in a battle I've had with Anna in the past, I underfueled the car and then ran out of fuel. And that's not something you want to be doing, but every single tenth counts. Stopping on your marks, fueling the car as little as possible, and then getting on the starter motor as soon as you can. It's going to be tense for them down there in the pit lane.
Yeah, and speaking of that pit lane, a drive-through penalty for Faruqi, and that would have been for track limits. So I wanted to touch on this a little bit earlier, didn't get a chance to, but now with the drive-through, I think it's the best time to do so. Zolder, not necessarily the nicest track for track limits. You can cut those chicanes just a little bit, and all of a sudden, you have a warning for yourself. And Furuki takes one too many, as we see the Audi of Unstead trying to catch Lodge. Not is that Lodge? No, that is no. They're actually on different laps. Sorry. Just used to seeing those cars actually close to each other, but no, they're on different laps. Never mind. But yeah, no. Speaking of track limits, this chicane here, especially Villeneuve, you take a little bit too much curb there. You go across the cones the cones have disappeared a long time ago now, but
Yeah, the cones
there's
went
a little,
lap 1.
yeah, but there are track limits there, and you cut a little bit too much of that track, and you have a warning. And we just saw the first drive-through. Are we expecting to see more, Max? You're an experience with track limits.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. But I think, that with those cones gone, you sort of underestimate just how useful they are. And I thought as we saw them disappear on lap 1, that it's going to be a bit more difficult to judge those track limits, because you can take a lot of curb there, especially at Villeneuve, that second chicane. But once those cones are gone, you don't really have a reference point for it. So it's almost luck rather than judgment. And when you're fighting so close to another car, you don't want to say, "Oh, maybe that was a bit close," and lift off. You want to just stay flat as you go down towards the hairpin, and that might cost you. And it's cost Furuki here today.
Definitely, and that's a little bit unfortunate considering he was quite far up in that battle. Lodge now in the pits as well, taking his final pit stop. Is now done. Just a quick splash and dash for him. Well, I say quick, a 14-second pit stop, so maybe a little bit of damage repairs or quite a lot of fuel. We'll see Perkins taking an extra pit stop actually. So I wonder if that's a fuel pit stop, under fueled, or maybe even new tires. We'll see why that is, but either way, he takes an extra pit stop, 16 seconds, so just a bit of fuel, bit of damage repairs. He did obviously have quite a bit of damage from that incident with Josh Parrott earlier that Josh is now carrying a 10-second penalty for. 4 cars yet to pit. Nathan Carey here in 6th position, just crossing the line for his 45th lap, I believe. Anna Langston Foster in 3rd, Jack Noller in 2nd, Harry Spears with a commanding lead in 1st position so far. Those 4 cars still yet to pit, and yeah, I mean, at this stage, Harry Spears effectively has the freedom to pit whenever. I believe he has the pit stop gap, even if he were to change tires, that he does. Mm-hmm. So he's got about a minute gap. He's almost lapped the field. So he'll be fine to pit whenever. He could even go for new tires for another Simhound fastest lap. Jack Noller, quite far behind right now. Also has a pit stop gap to Anna Langston Foster with about a 50-second gap. So the top two in their own leagues, own separate leagues today, with the rest of the midfield playing catch up.
Yeah, I think as you were saying in that battle for that Simhound fastest lap, Noller is about a second and a half behind, so won't be winning those gloves or shoes that you can get at simhound.com, but you may be able to buy himself some with the code BUSR10 for 10% off at simhound.com. But yeah, I think there's going to be no touching that lap. A second and a half ahead, and then Noller himself is another second ahead of the rest of the field on those fastest laps. But one thing that I've found a little bit puzzling, but again relates to what we were saying earlier about Anna Langston Foster, that she's not particularly reactionary as we go to Joe Scher, is that Scher has taken his last pit stop and is in clean air. So this could be a mistake here from Anna Langston Foster, but she's clearly got confidence in her pace and her strategy. But we may see Scher jump them in the pit stops as we head into the last sort of 15 minutes or so of this race.
Yeah, no, definitely possible. Cher's pit stop was 16 seconds, so obviously had to fuel for the rest of the race. Not a quick pit stop whatsoever. Time in pits was 50 seconds. So looking at the gap currently, the gap currently is 52 seconds. So 2 seconds to spare. Assuming Anna Langsdale Foster has a similar length pit stop, she's now 2 seconds ahead. So it's it's gonna be a close one, and we'll have to see what she decides to do. We know that both we know that Anna, obviously, as we mentioned, doesn't react necessarily to other people's strategies as much, unless she has to. But we also don't know whether there's someone feeding this information to her. As far as I know, I think everyone in that channel is racing, so they might not be watching that either. So it'll be very interesting to see what exactly is going to happen and if she decides to pit early. But one thing we have to remember, though, the later this pit stop goes, the shorter it will be. So if she's able to hit her marks, if she has the fuel in the car already, she can take 1 liter fuel, be in and out of the pit stops with about 3 or 4 seconds stationary. And that would be enough, even if Joe Scher is able to catch up about, half a second a lap, which right now
He's not doing.
He's not doing. So if Anna Langsdale Foster has the fuel, she's holding on to that fourth position on the road. It's actually very close with Jimmy Lin as well. So yeah, we're gonna be seeing the battle for third go to the last couple laps.
Yeah, I think, like you say, obviously, the further she goes into this race, the shorter that pit stop is going to be, and I think that's probably where she's going for. It was a very long pit stop from Cher, I think, just for fuel only for 20 minutes of the race. But so I think that might have put him out of it, and there a 31-1 on the previous lap is, I think, that could be curtains for his bid for this podium. But like you say, the gap to Jimmy Lin is just about 50 seconds at the minute. And Jimmy Lin is flying, setting his fastest laps of the race. So I think it will come down to when Anna pits and how much fuel she has to put into the car. Because like you say, at the minute it's getting down to around maybe being stationary for no more than 3 seconds, and that'll be her best bet of staying ahead of Lin.
Yeah, right now, Anna Langsdale Foster's last lap just shy of a 10th quicker than Jimmy Lin. So if she's able to keep this pace on pace with Jimmy Lin, and able to nail that last pit stop with no fuel, only 1 liter of fuel added, that will be enough for third position. But there's a lot of variables there, including getting that perfect pit stop. And that small mistake, if you miss your braking point by 2 meters in the pit lane, you'll get rolled back and you instantly lose, I think it's 2 seconds or so.
Yeah.
So it's that could be the deciding factor here today. The gap is hovering around that 50-second mark, just shy of it. Lin with a 29.8 last lap, so a little bit slower. Is in clear air though. We'll have to give way to Harry Spears in about half a lap's time, but yeah, it's close. It's very close, but we'll have to see once that pit stop comes in, and I think we'll be expecting that in about the next five or so minutes, most likely.
I think looking at the times that Anna may be safe, because the time through the pit lane without stopping is around 30 to 35 seconds, and if that stop is going, as we say, it's coming down and down each lap, will only be about 3 seconds. Then she's gonna be able to get out ahead of Lin, but it's just a case of what pace Lin has got in this car.
Yeah, just looking at some of the fastest pit stops we've had is about 47 seconds is some of the fastest pit stops or time in pits we've seen. obviously we've yet to see some of those splash and dashes, like full-on splash and dashes. So we'll have to see. But I mean, assuming it's about a 45-second pit stop, that will be enough. But it's going to be very, very close. And I mean, we were kind of expecting the two to battle, and we were looking at the race preview before the race. We were talking about drivers to watch potentially. You picked out Nathan Carey, has been involved in a couple incidents, now in 6th position. Will be able to no, actually will lose a couple positions, I believe, end up in 9th position after that pit stop, potentially 8th, depending on.
We'll be close with Parrot with that
Yeah.
penalty. Oh, Harry Spears has lost it.
Oh,
Going through the chicane.
That's curbs.
He didn't need to do that. He didn't need to do that. Maybe he's pushing on for that another fastest lap, because I mean, what else has he got to do, to be honest? But if he'd have had a bigger incident, he doesn't need to do this. It's the same thing. We saw it in Brands Hatch. He didn't need that second lot of tyres. So it's perhaps unnecessary risks that Harry Spears has been taking in this championship. Just he's getting enticed by that gap that he's got to obviously the car behind, but he needs to be careful because the barriers can hurt. But he's got away with that one, I think.
Yeah, he's got away with that one. Luckily, he still maintains a 1:20 gap, so still fine, but a little bit scary there. A little bit scary. You always, I mean, it's very easy there to end up in that wall. Generally speaking, the way the chicane is built, you don't normally end up there. If you do have to really take that first curb quite aggressively to end up in the wall there. Otherwise, you do end up on that outside sand pit, which isn't necessarily that dangerous. You can recover quite quickly, as we just saw Harry Spears do. But it's always a little bit of time. You have to clean up your tires afterwards as well, so you do lose a little bit of time there. A bit cleaner this. Well, I say cleaner. Yeah, that's a Bentley over the curbs at Zolder. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it's almost annoying seeing how much curb they can take, but yeah, Harry getting away with that one a little bit. But I think, as you say, he's safe in terms of a gap at the minute, as we see Anna Langsdale-Foster still pounding round, seeing whether she can keep that gap to Lynn. It's actually extended a little bit now, so she's looking increasingly safe as we go around. But this is what I was saying earlier about the strategy, is that we're still trying to work out who's going to come out in this podium, who's going to get it, and it's something you don't necessarily get with other race series, and I love it. I just love it so much.
Definitely. A 10th quicker there on the last lap compared to Jimmy Lynn. So
a corner cut there, though, as the lap, I think, is become invalid. So got to be careful with those. I don't know how many warnings she's on, but that would be heartbreak at this point.
Definitely. Harry Spears now in the pits. So that will be his last pit stop of the race. We'll be watching that to see whether that's just a splash and dash, or if he decides to take tires potentially for another shot at the somehow fastest lap, which he is holding currently with over a second gap, in fact. So no threat there. Nope, just 5 seconds in the pits. So that's about as quick as you can get with getting any amount of feel. And we'll be watching that time in pits. So 39 seconds the time in pits for Harry Spears, as we see him just come out ahead of Anna Langsdale-Foster there, conveniently. So yeah, 39 seconds in the pits for a quick, perfect splash and dash. So that is the gap that Anna Langsdale-Foster needs. And right now, she has got, 53.
And so yeah, so she looks like she's got that gap. Someone who might not necessarily have that gap, although with the 10-second penalty, it does make it a bit less interesting. But Nathan Carey is currently around 40 seconds ahead of Perrott in that midfield sort of battle, and he's still got to take a pit stop, whether it'll be a splash and dash or whether they'll take a bit more fuel. But that'll be a gap that maybe they're watching. Although, yeah, like we said, with that 10-second penalty for Josh Perrott, and maybe that's not as big an issue. But we've always, as we saw last week, we do have Court of Appeals. We do have post-race instant reviews. So maybe Josh will have that time penalty reduced again. But we'll see. We shall see.
Yeah, that we will. Obviously, there are probably a couple people a bit unhappy with their penalties. I think Jason List is going to be one of them. I think a little bit of a disappointing start for Jason List. I mean, he's a driver that we've kind of used to seeing up in the podium battles normally. Obviously, the Ferrari not necessarily a favored car in this current BOP on these tracks also. So a little bit unfortunate there, I think, for Jason List. But it'll be interesting to see if he's able to bounce back. Obviously, he had quite a few incidents. Even here today has had 2 incidents, even aside from the penalty. So it's genuinely slightly disappointing to see how he was one of my drivers to watch for the entire season, and not seeing him up top is kind of surprising, really.
Yeah, I think it's been a messy race for Jason today, which is unfortunate for him. But we've seen some good pace throughout the race. But as Nathan Carey comes in for his final pit stop, but yeah, it's been a messy one for him, and I think he will be disappointed in his performance today. Hopefully, be looking to bounce back next round, and see what happens.
Yeah, that we will see. So Nathan Carey in, as you mentioned, we'll be watching when he comes out, especially compared to Josh Parrott. Obviously, we never know, slow pit stops can happen. We've seen mistakes as, that's lodge into the wall. Was that Fuki? No, that was that? Which one was that? No, that was Fuki, actually.
I think Unstead has got a yellow flag next to his name as well.
Yeah, so a couple...
slow car on the exit of turn 4, maybe just running a little bit wide. Like we said, we've seen it's an easy thing to do because you are right up against that tiny curb and that big gravel trap. So maybe it's just running slightly wide, but that's gonna not be too good for him. As we see, I think Parrott has come out very close to Nathan Carey.
Yeah, I believe. Just about half a second separating the two. But obviously, Parrott with that 10-second penalty will not have this position net. But a little bit of a mistake even from Nathan Carey there.
Good friends, these two, so there's certainly going to be bragging rights that they're fighting for, and I think arguments about the penalty afterwards.
Yeah, so Josh Parrott has a look on the inside, doesn't go for it in the end. And we'll see. Obviously, this is something that is still a thing. Jack Miller also in the pits now for his last splash and dash. But this is something that can still affect the race. Obviously, if Josh Parrott makes the move stick and that penalty is reduced or removed, that could still be a position for Josh Parrott, as Anna Langstaff-Foster also now in the pits. That gap prior to entering pits was over 50 seconds, so we're expecting Anna Langstaff-Foster to be ahead of Jimmy Lin, but we'll be watching for that. So now these two head towards turn 1. Josh Parrott is not really able to get quite close. I mean, we do know that the M4 does have a quite good grip. Now up the inside goes Josh Parrott into turn 2. Good room given from both sides as they go there.
Good
to
racing
turn
here.
3. Now into turn 4. Still side by side. No, Nathan Carey able to get ahead as Josh Parrott has to compromise his line. Even a little bit of sand there, and not able to get by as Anna Langstaff-Foster now comes out of the pits, returns back onto the circuit, and quite far ahead. Let me just get that gap for you. About 8 seconds ahead of Jimmy Lin. So a comfortable pit stop for Anna Langstaff-Foster. A 8-second stationary, 42 seconds overall in the pits. So not a bad pit stop at all, and looks to be securing that 3rd position for now. Obviously, track limits could still play a factor here, so wouldn't count anyone out just yet. But looks to be a safe 3rd place so far.
That's the other point that you raised, is obviously with Perrett and Carey, is that if Perrett is putting the pressure on Nathan there, then could pick up a track limit warning or two, and yeah, that's can also obviously impact the race. But we see the gap is extending a little bit now. But yeah, excellent strategy today from Anna Langsdale-Foster, and excellent driving has put her up into this podium position. Jimmy Lin will probably be a bit disappointed, but also Cher, I think that second pit stop seemed a little bit long, so I'm not sure what happened there. But yeah, after being in those podium positions for so long, and now he's, unfortunately for him, down in 5th.
Yeah, it was 10 extra seconds on that pit stops compared to both Lin and Anna Langsdale-Foster. Actually, well, Jimmy Lin had that early pit stop and then reverse round. But in terms of the overall pit stop time, there's 10 seconds more in the pits for Cher, and that basically right now the gap between Jimmy Lin and Cher about 8 seconds. It obviously cost. So yeah, it's. I wonder if that was just maybe poor strategy with the fuel, or whether that was damage that may have not needed to be repaired. But especially when you look at his early pace and the amazing first couple laps, it's a bit disappointing perhaps. But either way, a fifth position, nothing to scoff at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in just their second race in the championship, that's a good result. Gaining one position from the start. Obviously, you'll always be thinking, oh, what if this, what if that? And after running in those podium positions for so long, it will be slightly disappointing. But yeah, something to come away with, in a good points haul in this championship fight.
Definitely. As we approach, I believe we are now. It's actually quite close whether we're on our last lap or not. We'll be seeing that once Harry Spears goes through. I think it's actually very close whether we're going to be on our last lap or not. So we'll be watching that. But yeah, not really any battles going on anymore that much. A lot of the cars have kind of spread out over this lap now, as Jack Noah comes through and tries to lap Lee. And
Perrett's gone off for the first chicane, it looks like, which is
not
going to help him with his penalty with Lodge behind. So that's going to be close. There's only 3 seconds in it now with that penalty, I believe.
Yeah, the 13 seconds. So three seconds to net there. So he's just gonna have to get a move on, and we will see another lap. About 10 seconds to go. Harry Spears crossed the line, so now entering our last lap for the leaders, and yeah, Josh Perrett actually really has to get a move on. Had the pace over Lodge though, so assuming he's able to keep it on the road, should be completely fine, as we see Jason List there lapping Furuki, or Furuki trying to unlap Jason List. Either way won't affect the final result in any way, barring any incidents so far. Quite a dominant performance from Harry Spears.
Yeah, you could certainly say that. We saw it last time we came here with Harry at Zolder, that just something about this track, he absolutely loves it. Whether it's the car combination, whether it's just the track, he's got feel around here. It's just a sublime performance. We see some lovely drone shots of our leader here. I'm sure Loughborough will love that with the LSBU style on the side. LSU.
Always great to see the pink LSU Bentley as they go to the last chicane, back on to the main straight, and Harry Spears takes victory here at Zolder, getting his first win of the season as well. And yeah, we're back on tied points, I believe, in the championship as well, with Jack Noah as well. That's Furuki in first on the first corner, going a bit deep after the checkered flag. Jack Noah has to still round out the rest of the lap. Will take second place though. Jason List, Nathan Carey 6th and 7th. I think pretty decent performances for both. I think they'll be relatively happy with that one, I imagine. I think Unstead perhaps disappointed. Unstead and Fruki probably both quite disappointed with 9th and 10th. I'm sure they would have liked to see a better one. But someone who won't be disappointed, I think, Anna Langsdale Foster taking 3rd position and the podium. And after a pretty consistent performance, great strategy and good drive.
Yeah, I think it was that classic strategy that we've seen Anna perfect over the last couple of seasons of this new format. Is that going long on the first stint and then that splash at the end, and it's played out perfectly for her today. And I hope those are donuts rather than anything else. Yeah,
I
it
believe
looks
they
like it.
are.
There's no traction control going on there. Yeah, as we see a nice show there from Anna. As I think, is this their first podium, or have they got another one?
Might be. We'll have to ask. I'm not entirely sure. I know the podium has evaded Anna quite a few times, but either
Yeah.
way, so that is the final results. Well, the provisional results for the race so far. Harry Spears takes a dominant victory. Jack Noah in second place. Anna Langsdale Foster rounding out the podium, and yeah, I'm impressed. I'm impressed by Harry's dominance. I'm not surprised by Harry's dominance, but I'm impressed by the midfield today. I think they gave us a brilliant battle all around. I think even all the way at the back of the field, Ishan Wells and Perkins, for example, great battles throughout the race, clean battles throughout the race, and I just love to see it.
Yeah, we saw battles up and down the field today, which is always we love to see it. Things we love to see. Um, so, but I think Zolder lends itself quite a lot to that because obviously you get the faster car ahead, but they can't necessarily, or the faster car behind, sorry, and they can't necessarily get past. So it certainly promotes racing, which on the surface might not look like it, but yeah, it's certainly been a thrilling one today with strategy. You know, drivers coming back through the field, drivers like Jason List maybe a little bit disappointed, but yeah, I think it was a cracking race.
Yeah, and just to confirm, I believe the Simhound fastest lap of the race did go to Harry Spears once again. So the second fastest lap of the race of the season for him. We'll see if there's anyone to challenge him later on in this season, or if he's going to take quite a dominating victory on those. Just as we wait for the interviews, any major highlights you want to bring up? Any moment of the race for you?
God, there were so many different battles that it's sort of I'm struggling to pick which one exactly. I think the battle with Numbers and I think it was Cher, wasn't it? That when they were battling, sort of a couple mistakes from Anna, but she placed the car perfectly and managed to stay ahead there. I thought that was I love to see some defensive driving myself, so it was brilliant to see something like that happen.
Definitely. I think, I mean, it's hard for me to really pick out a moment of the race as well. I think we saw a couple really good overtakes. But I think the first couple laps with Joe Share climbing up the field, I think that those were some of my moments of the race. But without further ado, we have some drivers in the interview waiting room. So let's get on board with that. We're gonna bring in our first driver, Josh Parrott. Hello there, Josh. Uh, Decent race, quite a few positions made up. How did you feel?
Um, I don't know. I honestly am quite upset with my position at the end. I feel like I had pace at the beginning. Couple incidents happened. I don't feel like I deserve the 10 seconds. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna say that on stream. Um, but hey, racing's racing. I don't know.
Yeah, that's. I think we brought you in here. You were one of our top climbers in the race, which was obviously good to see. But yeah, we wanted to also get a little bit of an insight on your opinion on the incident. Obviously, you've alluded to it a little bit there. We've got this new rule book, which is a little bit more harsh on penalties like that. So is that something that well, clearly you said you weren't happy with it, but what are your thoughts on this new rule book? Do you think it's fair? If it's across the board, or is there something more that you want to maybe say?
Think it's fair. I just there were a lot of penalties given out throughout the race. I don't really, again, like, I wasn't involved in many, and I wasn't around them when they were happening. But it seemed like they were getting a lot of 5 seconds, and then maybe mine was the most drastic, and 10 seconds seemed like a suitable fit. Honestly, like the harsher penalties are fine. Like I think they need to happen so that people drive a bit more carefully. But I don't know. So sometimes like you get into like a tiny little tap, and it's very heavily judged, and it always kind of gets you down a little bit.
Yeah, fair enough. That's understandable. But yeah, thanks for coming in to talk to us, Josh. And unlucky on the penalty, but yeah, a good race otherwise with those 3 positions gained.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, as we see the Simhound highlights of the race in the background as well, we're gonna bring in our 3rd place finisher. So, hello, Anna. Welcome to the commentary booth. That's a podium. How did you feel?
Oh, so great. I mean, I was struggling to. I thought I'd thrown it away for most of the race. And then I went off track. I was like, wait, how have I just overtaken Shea? And I was like, okay, I've just got to defend. Because if I can force him into taking his final pit stop early, he's going to run into traffic and I'm going to run away with it.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we saw both of you had some incidents whilst you were out on your own in that clean air, but then we saw some excellent defensive driving from you. It was as you well know, I appreciate some good defensive driving, but your strategy and pace today, it just worked out perfectly for you. So was it always going to be that from the outset, or did you move on your feet, reacting to Cher and Lynn perhaps, or what was the strategy?
I literally just did my usual strategy. I always try and take my splash as late as possible because I don't want to fall back into the traffic, and it paid off today. Combine that with these custom setup that I was running, it let me just absolutely attack the chicane, like just full on take the curve in a way that people said was impossible for the McLaren.
Yeah, just to touch on that, on the setup, we obviously saw a lot of drivers doing quite a bit of setup work prior to the race, both last minute and throughout the week as well. How important is the setup and the setup work for these races? Is it something that you use to get the final edge against the other McLaren drivers in the midfield, or is that something that you just want to do because it makes you faster yourself?
Most of the pace is just going to come from the driver. It is literally just the final 2 or 3 temps. But if you have a setup that's a little bit safer, it doesn't matter if you lose that extra tenth because keeping it on the track one more time than the other guy is going to get the position.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, congratulations on your podium, and I believe that also ties you with Jimmy Lin on the championship as well. So we look forward to seeing more battles between you guys as the season progresses.
Thank you.
All right, and now we'll bring in our winner, Harry Spears. Hello, Harry. Welcome to the commentary booth. You've taken the win on the road once again. Fastest Simhound fastest lap as well. How do you feel after that race?
Yeah, it's excellent. Yeah, this is one of the tracks I was really looking forward to in the Bentley. So yeah, I was always hoping for a good result today. And yeah, so it's pretty much just sort of a solo hot lapping session after the first few laps. And my goal in the race was to lap the entire field, which unfortunately didn't happen. But I had a good amount of fun trying.
Yeah, we've seen you dominate here before. When we've come here in previous seasons. Is it just something about the track, or is it the track and car combination? What is it that you love so much about this place?
I just get on really well with Zolder, and I love it as a track. Like even in my PC2 days, this was one of my favourites.
Yeah.
At one point, I had the GTE world record around here, Project Cars 2, in the Corvette. And yeah, so I love it in the Mercedes and the Bentley as well. It's just it's not quite as good as it used to be. It's had a bit of a nerf lately, but it's just like on another level around here,
Yeah.
and it
Well,
feels excellent to drive.
we certainly saw that love today. Perfect Valentine's Day, you could say. Just to bring that in as well. But yeah, an outstanding performance, Harry. So congratulations.
Just just to before we let you go though, moving into the season, obviously you're a massive favorite. I mean, even today, prior to the race, I believe Jack came into the call, congratulating you on the win, even prior to the race. Is that something you take any pressure from being the favorite, expecting a good performance, or is it something you can just kind of shrug off and perform at your best either way?
No, to be honest, with feedback, either positive or negative, it doesn't really affect me too much. I wouldn't say. Usually, if it's negative, it spurs me on, and same if it's positive. Have a nice bit of motivation. But yeah, getting comments like that's always really nice. Yeah, right back at Jack because he's a really fast driver as well.
All right. Well, you're going to be the favorite for the rest of the season for sure as well. But congratulations on the win. You're now tied in the championship, so we'll be watching the battle to come with a close eye.
Yeah, can't wait. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right. So that is the interviews for today. I think some interesting points of view. I think your conversation with Josh there about the penalties, I think drivers seem to be agreeing with them mostly.
Yeah.
I think it's obviously a good thing. We've done quite a lot of work. The race organizers, especially, have done quite a lot of work in adapting all the rules, the rule book, to a style that the drivers do enjoy and make it fair for everyone. So definitely, if the drivers are happy with that, then I think that's success. Quite a lot of happy drivers today as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think it's a good race to move on to the next round. And looking ahead to the next round, what are we expecting, Max?
Yeah, I think next round is at Nürburgring, I believe. Let me double check that. Yes, it is. So Nürburgring, it's both a very similar track and a very different track in certain ways here to Zolder. We've got not particularly many places to pass, not many straights, a lot of tricky chicanes and curbs. So, we may well see the same drivers doing well, but equally, it can be a tricky beast. So it'll be interesting to see how the guys run next time out.
Yeah, definitely. I think Nürburgring's always a bit of a wild card with weather, especially.
Hmm.
If I remember correctly, looking at the weather reports, there is a chance of rain for Nürburgring. There was a slight chance of rain for Zolder as well. Obviously, it didn't pan out, but it's I believe higher for Nürburgring. And rain at Nürburgring is always it always really does bring a bit of extra spice into that race. How do you prepare for something like that? With I think it was about a 70% chance of rain. So there's a chance that there's a chance for a dry race as well. Like how does that change the preparation going into that race for all the drivers?
I think there might be less of an emphasis on top speed, which could put people into issues, as we said. Like it's a difficult place to pass, but coming down that back straight, you're going to want that top end. So, but people may be running slightly higher downforce because of that rain percentage. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see for sure. But that kind of rounds out the evening for us. Yeah, I think any last words for this race here, this final wrapping things up, this final Valentine's Day evening that we've had.
I think if you've forgotten a Valentine's present, you know what you can do. Juuso, do you know what you can do?
What can
You
I do,
can
Max?
you can head to simhound.com and get yourself some sim racing apparel, some sim racing gloves, sim racing shoes, all 10% off with BUSR 10 at checkout. And yeah, get your special someone a special something.
Well, that that really does wrap that up. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. With me casting here today has been Max, the ultimate shell. In production today, Pete, and observing and those beautiful camera shots by Jack. I've been Juuso, and that's it for the BUSR tonight. We'll be back on Saturday for F1. And I hope you all have a very lovely Valentine's Day evening. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.